Hey class, welcome to our week 9 after school review. Just kidding, not after school review, this is a vocab review. So, short terms for this week, let's go over them so you get it really brushed up, slam dunk this one, and roll on. So let's start with this. The first term we have is a price-taking consumer. A price-taking consumer is a pretty simple idea. Usually in a competitive market with many consumers, you will be a price-taking consumer. What does this mean? It means that whatever price the market is availing is what you take. So when you go to a store and there's like a pair of shoes for $50, you have to accept that price. You can't say, lower the price and I'll buy extras, or raise the price and I will buy more. You really need to, or lower, no, sorry. But you essentially have to go ahead and compete for those goods, but at a market price. So a price-taking consumer is a consumer that takes the market price of a good. Very, very simple idea. They have no market power. They have no way to adjust or negotiate the price of a good. A price-taking firm, on the other hand, would be a firm in a competitive market. A firm in a competitive market, like a market for, as we covered before, like tomatoes, means that because all the products are identical, the firm does not have a lot of say in what the price is. In fact, they have none. So the price-taking firm in a perfectly competitive market go together really closely. So what that means is these firms, when a market, a PQSD, sets a market price, that firm has no say over the price, which means their demand curve is perfectly elastic. Meaning if they raise their price above it, no one will buy their good because it's an identical product. And if the price is below it, well, remember, if it's perfectly elastic, they can sell all of their goods that they made at the market price. Any price below it, they can also sell all their goods, but here's the thing, it wouldn't matter because they'd just be getting less money per good. At the market price, they could make more money per good. So no one would ever do that. It's just losing money. Have a perfectly competitive market. That's a market where you have a lot of conditions to be met that we'll cover here. So for example, in a perfectly competitive market, there will be many buyers and many sellers. Remember, many buyers and many sellers means so many that no one can influence the market. So if you're like, but how many, what's the number? It's not a number, it's just so many that if one seller stopped producing or one buyer stopped buying or one buyer bought more, one seller produced more, no one would notice at all. All right, moving on. In a perfectly competitive market, there are low or no barriers to entry or exit. That means you can enter the market or exit the market easily. So what is free entry and exit? That means I can jump into that market, start growing tomatoes very easily, or I can leave that market very, very easily. You'll see that's also true for a natural mountain. We'll get there in a second. So what is a barrier to entry? It's anything that makes it harder, more expensive to enter a market. If you think of what something with high barriers to entry, for example, power generation here with TECO, if you wanted to challenge TECO and compete against them making electricity, you'd have to build power plants, you'd have to build electrical lines, you'd have a huge amount of fixed costs that you would have to pay just before you get your first customer. So barriers to entry are that. It could be regulations, it could be just technology or technological access. It's anything that makes it harder to enter a market or sometimes exit a market as well. Now, perfectly competitive markets have identical products, so there's no product differentiation. So that means that whatever one firm makes, every firm makes an identical product. And price is the only thing that determines whether you buy it or not. Hence why they're price taker. Now with that, they'll make normal profits in the long run. That'll be an important thing to remember as we get further. Remember, that's not zero accounting profit, zero economic profit. Remember, normal profits, zero economic profit, same thing. All right. The next thing we have here is market share. So market share is the amount of sales in that market that one firm is responsible for. So in a perfectly competitive market, each firm would have a very low market share. Now, in other market structures where there's many competitors, they would have higher market shares, which is one testing tool we have, which is it's not on here, but the Hersham Index. Now that we could just call it the HHI, which would be good enough. But what that is it's a square of each firm's market share. What this means is if you have a low number in the HHI, it's a very competitive market. It could be perfectly competitive, monopolistic competitive, like especially if it's in the hundreds or low hundreds. Because think, if in a perfectly competitive market you had 100 producers, all of them have a single percent of market share. If you square that 1%, that's 1, and then you add them together, that would be 100. And that would be a very low HHI number. However, if you think of something that we get to like an oligopoly, let's say you had two firms that split the market share evenly. Well, that would be 50 and 50. Well, if we square those, that's going to be 2,500 and 2,500. Added together, that's 5,000. That would not be a very competitive market. And if a firm had something like 90% of the market share, that would be 8,100. And that's a huge amount of market share, a non-competitive market, a monopoly for sure. So the HHI, remember, is the square of each firm's market share all added together. So the sum of each firm's market shares is square. But you just kind of add the market share, where you square it and then you add it. All right, moving on. So I know that HHI is not up here. You do need to know it. That's the term. All right, the next one we have is a natural monopoly. Natural monopoly is a special kind of monopoly. Now, let's cover this. A monopoly is when you have a market dominated by one firm. So you would have many buyers, few sellers, and few, I mean one main seller. There would be high barriers to entry and exit, so it would be very hard to get in or out of this market. Now, a natural monopoly is different. Oh, and their price makers is going to be that, because they have full control of their price. So a monopoly is, say, one buyer and seller. That's essentially, many buyers, one seller. That one seller, we mean, that isn't the only one. They could be in a pure monopoly. They don't have to be the only one. They could have like 9% market share. If a firm had 90% market share, you wouldn't care what the other tiny 10% market share firms do. Which means even if they're not alone, they can dominate a market, because if other firms try to compete, they just dominate it. They don't care what they're doing. So that's essentially how you know it's a monopoly. Now, so high barriers to entry, could have identical products, could have differentiated products, hard to say. But they can make profits in the long run, and that's going to be the key thing for monopolies. In the long run, a monopoly can make profits. Now, a natural monopoly is a kind of monopoly we have with what I'll like to call long-term economies of scale. That means it has very, very high fixed costs, which means as they produce more, it spreads those fixed costs out, which means you have that big, very deep average total cost curve. This means that if they produce more, their costs fall for a long time. Tico is a great example of this too, because they have very, very high fixed costs, the amount to make a power plant, run electrical lines to every house in the county. That is a big cost that they have to bear before they can turn their lights on in the first household. Because of that, they're going to want to go ahead and produce a lot of customers and a lot of electricity to many people, because that lowers their costs every time they add one more customer. So the key to natural monopoly, they have high fixed costs and they use economies of scale. So public utilities like public works, public water companies, Tico, those would all be examples of the natural monopoly. All right. Some things that can create a monopoly is a patent or copyright. Those are legal protections to be able to produce something. So a patent is for good, copyright is for intellectual property. So if I write a book and I get copywritten, or if I have a logo that's copyrighted, only I can use it for like the author, less than 75 years. And that means only I can sell that book, that work, Mickey Mouse, or copyright like deals. But patents that deal work for inventions and other things. So if I invent this new device, I can have a patent on it, and the only one who can make it with my patent. Now, when we get to imperfect competition, essentially we're talking about oligopoly and monopolistic competition. Imperfect competition essentially means that you have high barriers to entry or product differentiation, which means you have a downward sloping demand curve. So monopolies is no competition, but imperfect competition means you have some competition, and that would be oligopoly or monopoly. But high barriers to entry or differentiated products. You can actually have both, is what some oligopolies do. So let's go cover what oligopoly or monopolistically competitive firm is. A monopolistically competitive firm is do not focus on monopoly and monopolistic, focus on competition. I call that like t-shirts at the mall. Many buyers, many sellers, but the products are not identical. So what does that all mean? That means that they have some control of their price. You might pay more for one shirt, less for another, which means they can raise their price and sell less, or lower their price and sell more. Unlike a price-taking, perfectly competitive firm that has one price and that's it. Now, it is very competitive because, hey, if I see the shirt price go up too much, I won't buy it. I'll just buy other shirts because the products are still similar. Restaurants are another really good example of monopolistically competitive firms. Very similar to prepared meals and food, but they're not identical, and some can charge a little more, and some a little less. Now, they have low barriers to entry and exit, very competitive. In fact, the only thing that differentiates them from a perfectly competitive firm is that product differentiation. But they do have different graphics, graph and slope of the demand curve because they are imperfectly competitive. They have that product differentiation. Oligopolies can have differentiated products or not. It doesn't matter because that's one with many buyers and few sellers. A lot of times we're referred to it as two. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6. And the HHI has a cutoff score that determines an oligopoly or not. A lot of times we'll say it's 2 because so few sellers that they're interdependent. That means the actions of one will influence the behavior of the other. So if you think Coke and Pepsi is a good example. Coke raises its prices. Pepsi might keep their prices low and try to undercut Coke, or take that as a signal and go, oh, I can raise them too. So they will change their behavior based on someone else's action. So they will have high barriers to entry. That's almost always true about these types of firms. They make it so hard for some people. Car makers, cell phone makers are often oligopolies as well. For cell phone operating systems, duopoly. All right, so hopefully you guys can nail this one, and then I'm